Good morning, everyone. The Lord be with you. Let us pray. Merciful God, we thank you for the gift of your church, especially Calvary. We ask you to continue to give us wisdom and guidance as we discern your will for this place, this people, and give us the courage and the wisdom to pursue it. In your name we pray. Amen. So, I had a realization about 1 minute after the first of these three classes, and that was I wish I had scheduled this for about 10 weeks rather than 3, but we had a 3-week open block, and that's why I did it that way. The questions that you've asked in here have really been excellent and very helpful. What I hope you've been able to do is take some of this material home with you, facts and figures, and study it. And I certainly welcome any questions you may have or comments. Gordon had an excellent one last week, which was, I didn't tell you this, Gordon, it was exactly proving my point. Functionally, we exist in one way. You would describe us as a congregation last week, a family pastoral program resource size. We actually fit one, but we act like another one. That's not totally abnormal. That can be a very good thing. We punch above our weight is one way to put that. But the underlying theme to all three of these classes is, I believe that Calvary Church has and will have a very distinctive vocation in the life of the Diocese of Pittsburgh, and then even in the life of the whole Episcopal Church. I assume if you're on that side, you have trouble seeing because of the light. Gordon does. I could tell by his squint. It's just fine. You're okay. I'll try to move around a little bit. I believe that vocation as a leading parish, in the old days used to be called Cardinal Parish, whatever it is, it doesn't matter what we call it. But what matters is we begin to recognize and live into what that would look like. This diocese as a whole is smaller, has fewer resources than it used to. Its future is getting brighter, but we went through a very, very dark period. Calvary is in very good shape, as I say, but even when you start to look at us, it's a little different than it used to be. Do you have 3 pages? Well, you have more than that from me. Connecting to Calvary. Where's Lynn Orr? Lynn, don't answer. Anybody else, what is this booklet? Yes, opportunities to get involved in activities at Calvary, how to be further involved if you choose to be. And the question is, what do we do with this?
We give it to newcomers.
We give it to newcomers. So there are lots of ways. I think it's very important to understand that not everybody approaches church coming in originally in the same way. Some people come in because they're Episcopalians and they're not here this week. They were Episcopalians in Seattle. They have been their whole lives, and they moved to Pittsburgh. Calvary is the only normal place for them to go. Some come, that's Ann and John Keeler. Some come because their friend invited them here, and they weren't an Episcopalian before. Some people have joined Calvary because they were married here I've heard a lot of stories. Sam Shoemaker did the wedding, and I was Presbyterian, and my husband grew up at Calvary, or some combination, and you start adding up the stories. Oftentimes, this sounds a little funny, so bear with me. Oftentimes, it's a crisis, good or bad, that brings people into church. The crisis being they move from someplace else. They're afraid they're going to lose their jobs or looking for some sense of, continuity, tradition, something bigger than themselves. Sometimes they're going to have a baby. They get married. They're going through a divorce. All those transitional times might even be a better name than crisis. Good, bad, is often when people enter the life of a church. We have lots of ways for people to be involved here, more so than most congregations. You can be an extrovert, you can be an introvert, you can be shy, you can be the most outgoing person ever, you can be a financial whiz, you're good with music, and so on and so forth. Who is moving to Pittsburgh now? Techies. Are they, generally speaking, Eastern European workers, craftsmen? No, that was a long time ago. Who actually is moving to Pittsburgh now, by and large? Who are they? Yuppies. Computer people, that's partly true. Medical people. I've heard this, that there are more medical jobs now than there were steel mill jobs. Is that actually true? UPMC employs that many? Okay. So it's a different group moving to Pittsburgh. Also, I would add, it is many people who are not Eastern European or Northern European stock. It's from Japan, China, Korea, India, a variety of other places. I had an interesting experience this week. Have any of you ever been, I know one person lives there, any of you ever been to Kenmar Apartments? They're quite nice. 240 apartments. Have we ever had any type of outreach into that building? I'm not talking about, way out in the valley or here. I just mean that you can see through the doors. Ever intentionally done that, Sue?
We offer English language for the young mothers. In fact, we offer a program to introduce the children to a preschool.
Yes.
For a lot of the families.
That is a very good point. The English as a second language classes we offer, it's about 20 people. I'm pretty sure that all of them, is Adele here? 20 people, I would say at least 18, probably all 20, come from across the street. Our beginnings program has 54 children. It is a little United Nations if you go down there. And probably easily 2/3 of the families are from there. Fantastic things. And I think those are things we ought to build on. My point is, we expect people to come to us. Do we go over there? Have we? I didn't think so. So they came to us this week, the manager and assistant manager. I met with them and we talked for quite a while. They said, "Do you know where Kenmar, the property, came from?" I said, "Well, actually, I do. I just read this. Because why is it set back?" And I said, "I know. The church bought that, and then we sold it mid-20th century to a developer. There used to be a hotel there, and we sold it to them with the stipulation that the view of Calvary Church could not be blocked from Shady Avenue." It's a brilliant move. And so it's a beautiful drive up there. And if you look at the building, it's kind of a plus shape. It's really, again, quite nice. But it has given them this huge green space that they have because we demanded if we sell it and you develop it, this is what it looked like. So there is a long-term connection from the beginning. What we have talked about doing, I said, how many apartments are there? Anybody know? Exactly, 240. 1, 2, and 3 bedrooms. So that's easily 500 people. And I asked them, who lives there? Some retirees, white and black, Pittsburghers, because there's a garage, there's outdoor parking, there's a doorman as you come in, like a hotel. And I said, who else lives there? Japanese is the #1 ethnic group, then Chinese, then Korean, then Caucasian, African American, and Indian are all kind of mixed in there at number 4. That's who lives across the street from us, which I find fascinating. And so I asked these people, it's 2 young women, gave them a tour and said, have you ever thought about Have you ever thought about having a block party for all your neighbors to get to know one another? And we could get to know, like the people who live there in the building, and then us who live across the street. That's a wonderful idea. Yes, let's do that. Let's do it in September. So now we're talking about what it would look like for these 240 apartment dwellers to get to know us as a people. This isn't bait and switch where we have hot dogs. I joked, we have hamburgers, hot dogs, and sushi, and then they all come to church. This would be a social time where we get to know each other, they get to know each other, and the two groups. We probably should invite down the street too, and what about there and there and there, and PPI and Alpha House, and who's my neighborhood, I think is a question for ask. Sue, you got a point?
Many of the people residing in Denmark are here on a certain assignment from their company for a couple of years, or they could be graduate students. So they're here usually anywhere from 2 to 6 years.
That's exactly right. And great point. What do you mean by that?
That we have an optimum time to reach them. We should get them as soon as they come in to let them know what programs we offer.
It's true. There is another factor, I found that just for the recording's sake, Sue's point was the people who live there, by and large, are from 1, 2, up to 5 or 6 years. A company from Japan sends them over to UPMC, CMU Pitt to do some type of degree, learn something, study something, and go back. And that happens in a variety of ways in a variety of countries. And so if most of the people that live there, and I'm just picking one example because it's across the street, close, the group we can connect with, what is that commonality if they're all not from the United States of America and they've never been in Pittsburgh in their lives? And almost always it's the husband doing the project or class and the wife with any children is in the apartment. Every person there is a fish out of water. The two managers said every person there almost is looking for community, a sense to belong, because they don't know anybody or anything, or how to go to the grocery store, or get your doctor or dentist for you or your kids, and how you get your driver's license. And every single normal thing you do when you have to move into a new city, they've moved to a new country. And ESL helps with that, Beginnings helps with that, but that transition, how might a church help with those basic human needs? And I'm just my guess, if somebody helped with that, that person might be very interested in what else this community had to offer. Yes?
I'm not sure I can tell you that from time to time we have people come in, especially for things like the pageant.
Mm-hmm.
They'll come in, they won't stay the whole service. They'll come in and see what's going on. If there's a concert or a even song or something like that, we will have people come in.
People will come in for an evensong, a concert, just to check it out. That is the exact reason why we had an Easter egg hunt at Calvary Church last year. And we specifically invited the people across the street to have an American cultural experience. And there were a lot of people from across the street who came with their children, all dressed up, and took photos. The English as a second language class, a lot of it is practice your conversational English, but also, what in the world is Thanksgiving? They make the turkey cut out with your hand decoration. They got to do that because every kid does that in America. And why do you have turkey and cranberry and sweet potatoes and pie? And there's something about pilgrims and Indians and football. And what is all this? And what Thursday of the month is it in November? All those things we just grew up and know, but if it's a totally foreign thing to you, that's a great way to learn it. So having, I don't know what's the best way, soft ways to enter like that, a cultural experience, like a cookout, block party, an Easter egg hunt, a Christmas pageant, a concert, and so on, are ways to be open. Roger?
Are they Christian, basically, or are they some other religion?
That's a good question. I don't know. I could make an educated guess. Probably many of them are agnostic. Probably some are Buddhist, perhaps even Shinto. I'm guessing some are Hindu. Good point. There are a number, Presbyterian Church just knocked it out of the park with missionary work back in the day in Korea. And so many of the Koreans go to the Presbyterian Church. But I'm just making a guess that not all do, because I don't see a ton of people going out on Sunday morning to church and back again. A lot of people who call themselves Roman Catholic in Pittsburgh don't actually go to Mass anywhere. They just don't go. And a lot of people that are Presbyterian don't go and haven't been going. Those are the two biggest groups by far. I'm not interested in stealing a single sheep from across the street or anywhere else. I just hope people who want some sense of community, looking to be found by God, if we can make it open, it could look like a gigantic fortress if you're right next door, but to be able to open the doors literally and figuratively for some of these type of events, I think if people came, they'd find that Calvary is remarkably welcoming and warm. Would you agree with that? The building is not when you drive by, but the people absolutely are. T.J. Freeman, our curate, is here. Yay. Let me give a brief introduction, though TJ needs no introduction. But what we're talking about is specifically, before I even go to some of Calvary's facts and figures, the process by which we attract, welcome, integrate, those three steps. The attracting part is what we've just been discussing. Everything I've ever read, as in studies, literature, books, etc., on people coming into a church, my own experience for 20 years or whatever, and then lots and lots of other priests, points to doing one thing above all else if you want to keep the people that are visiting. Many congregations have trouble even getting a visitor in the door. If you live in the valley and people are continuing to move out of your town, it is very unlikely that you're going to get visitors showing up. If you are a beautiful building with a renowned music program and all our history in a great location, and you got people coming into the city, it's very likely people will visit. We have visitors, even if they don't stand or raise their hand, every week people are visiting, almost always at 9 and 11. And so what is the number one thing we can do that invites them to come back? Welcome them, handshake, that's a big part of it. The number one thing is, I'll say 1A and 1B. If a lay person, a member of the church, contacts the people who visited within a week, preferably within a couple days, it's much better if John and Mary show up and somebody knows John and Mary, if, say Jim and Mary Lou here are friends with them, writes them a note, calls them, so glad you visited Calvary this week. If you have any questions about it, I'd be happy to talk about our church. It's as simple as that. The other thing that has to happen is one of the clergy must contact the family by Monday or Tuesday at the latest. And there's a hierarchy by which it's done. It's different than it used to be, which TJ can talk about. It doesn't mean people are going to join, and this may not be for them. Some come and say, that's nice, but I really like a more intimate small group. Or I really like guitars and rock and roll. Or that's just too high church for me. Or it's too low church, or too whatever. But if they are looking, and this is right, following up is what we're now doing. We haven't had a long enough study sample to track. When I did this before, we were getting, this was where I was rector in Lawrence, Kansas, approximately 10% of those who visited filled out a card. 10% of those joined. When we started, very similar to what we're doing now, of follow-up by a layperson and especially by a priest And tracking that, it went up to about 40%. It may not be for everybody. That's not the point. If it is, we want to make sure that we are trying to meet that need. TJ's, make the big entrance, TJ. There you go. TJ's main job is, above all else, is
to stay tethered to the rector. Sorry. When you're nervous, deflect with humor. On Monday afternoons, I tend to block out about an hour and a half each Monday to call. To call is almost always the first thing that I do. And if there is not an answer or there's not a phone number, I will then email the person or family that has visited. The voicemail is probably the weirdest of any of it, because you don't really want to leave a message more than like 30 seconds, but you can't give a whole lot of information in 30 seconds. So that a lot of times ends in saying, and I will email all of this to you. Out of since we really started doing this in the fall, I'd say 75 to 90 visitors that we've had.
Would you repeat that? How many visitors we had
Well,
that had filled out a card?
I would say 75 to 90, which may be a little high, but out of that, only one has written back and said, please remove me from your list. And in that, they actually complimented the ambassadors group on the zeal with which they were carrying out their mission. They had just decided to stay with their current church. It's a broad mixture of people that come in. We don't get many people who have never been to church, which is a large percentage of the unchurched. Currently, statistics show have almost no religious upbringing. We're not reaching a lot of those people right now. The people we are reaching, Presbyterians. For one, a young man that was confirmed by the bishop a couple of weeks ago, lifelong Presbyterian. His mom was the president of the session at their church. He just needed something different and came here, visited. I called, we met, we had coffee, and a few months later, he was confirmed. He's active in the young adult group. We get a fair number of former Roman Catholics who are looking for something more in line with their personal, social, and political views. We get Episcopalians who moved from across the country. We get people who have graduated from Pitt. They're in long-term, they're in a relationship now. Maybe they're thinking about marriage, so they want to find a church. One of the couples who will be married here next summer came last June or July for the first time. Same thing, called them Monday afternoon, didn't get them, emailed back and forth. A couple weeks later, met for coffee. They've been active here ever since. They're, pledging members of the congregation now, and they will be married here in June. It's honestly about the best part of my week to be able to sit down and have these conversations with people, because all of this fades away and you're just 2 or 3 people sitting down, having coffee. sometimes we'll spend an hour and not talk about the church at all. It's just a relationship building experience. And then the next time we get together, maybe we talk about the church, maybe we don't. But what happens in these conversations is you bridge that gap between, because it can be a bit intimidating from the outside and from the inside. But look, oh, there's TJ. I know him. That calms me down. He introduced me, or Jonathan introduced me to this person. So now I'm sure you've noticed we've an exponentially greater number of young adults and newcomers who stay for coffee hour afterwards, or who feel comfortable calling one of the clergy here to say, I'm struggling with this, can I come into your office to speak about it? A few weeks ago, she's not here, so I'm not going to sell her out. One of the newcomers had struggled with something, called up, can I come in and talk about this? And they actually used the Camino talk as kind of a front to get into the other conversation they really wanted to have. And I was able to say, well, this issue that you're having, here are these groups we have here, that may be able to help with that. Here's the contact information. How can I help you get involved? So the following up, for nothing else, it builds relationship. And when we build relationship, it allows us to bridge gaps. Because when we know each other, it's easier to have conversation, it's easier to ask questions, it's easier to feel like you belong. I don't know how much. So.
Thank you. TJ's preaching again, so he needs to get ready. Is there any questions you have for TJ? So.
I don't have a question, I have an observance. I think the most important thing you were talking about that, TJ, at least to me, was it's the personal one-on-one that matters. It makes all the difference. It's, and that has to happen. And that's the new thing I think that we're doing, as opposed to the old thing, which used to be sending a card, but there's no face. There's no one-to-one. But I think the phone call right away and the one-on-one that you were doing is making a difference. And that's what we need to do more.
Well, when that one-on-one relationship happens, it then, if you look at it systematically, leads into integration into a small group. And then the small group leads into integration in the larger parish. And so it's exactly, just 1, 2, 3, how we, and there are going to be people who come every other Sunday but are never going to put their names on the books, especially millennials, because they don't feel the need to belong in the same way that other generations have before. But that sort of 1, 2, 3 individual, small group, large group is exactly, the path that leads to long-term relationship and I think long-term membership in the parish.
TJ, how many approximately each week of these, and by the way, these are almost always not at church when he gets together. It's in a coffee shop. That is neutral territory. About how many a week are you doing?
1 or 2.
1 or 2 a week, which is 1 or 2 a week more than we used to do. So 50, 75, 100 of these a year that we're now doing. You'll notice I most of the time talk about, there's nothing magic in this. I don't say visitors very much. I usually say guest. And a lot of that is a visitor, it just feels to me like the person's passing through. A guest, just by nature, one would treat a guest differently than a visitor. And I'm hoping, if this is right for them, the guests become members of Calvary. So the top priority for TJ, above everything else he does, is this. The most important thing, follow up with the new people on Monday. So thank you. Great job, TJ. I also don't in any way want to say this is just an all clergy thing. I think it's very important that that happen. He's saying you need to put a name and a face together so there's a connector. TJ hasn't quite figured this out yet, but he's going to pretty soon. All these young adults that are showing up, many of them are going to want to get married, and so guess who's going to be already their primary priest doing a whole bunch of those weddings, like Leslie does for camp. I used to do that too. It's very nice if Leslie or TJ or I or Carol or Ruth can connect with people, but it's much more important that it's all of you. We have two groups specifically charged with their mission, their ministry is to follow up. One is the Welcome Committee. Lynn, or is there a co-chair? Not really. So a group of people on the Welcome Committee, and you produce this book, Connecting to Calvary, and you write a letter to, and this packet goes to anybody who visits, is that correct? And then another group, the ambassadors, with Jim Southwood, and this is the leader, but there are a lot of people involved with both. What do you do, Jim? You follow up with a call, email?
Yep. Call or an email or both. Find out, first of all, what was their experience here, what was good, bad, indifferent, or whatever. Are they likely to come back? What can we do to help integrate them into the church?
Mm-hmm.
Try to make that connection that you were talking about with TJ and Sandra mentioned. That we say we'd like to be your friendly face at the coffee hour. So at least you know one person will come back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we try to do.
Thank you. So those two, they are, to me, symbols of what all of us can do. You say, oh my God, I got to do something else, or I'm shy. Meet people at your level of comfort. But I do think it's important. I will tell you what I am doing every single Sunday, anytime there's a service that's going on. I am always looking for somebody new. And please don't think it's rude at all if I'm talking to you and said, I've done this several times, there's a visitor standing in coffee hour like this by him or herself. How long would you be willing to do that in a strange place? I'm looking for that. And every single week I do that, and it's just normal. Look for that person who's clearly new, and please talk to them. I also try to keep in my head, there's a young woman who visited, I've been a couple months now with her. I've told the story a couple times. He's a good old Pittsburgh guy. She's from China. Didn't speak hardly any English at all. And so I was standing around and said, Vanessa Sterling is fluent in Chinese. And her experience of Calvary Church was dramatically changed because somebody, literally in this case, spoke her language. Does anybody here speak Japanese by any chance? Spanish? Any other fun languages? French, German. We had Portuguese, somebody from Brazil. I'm from Kentucky. I can barely talk English, so all of you can help. But not just language, but somebody who has a love for music, or somebody who grew up in, pick a state, or somebody who loves sports. It's very easy to talk at that level, at least to start, rather than to say, have you met Jesus Christ as your personal Lord and Savior? Whoa, how about the Stillers? Start where the person is and where you're comfortable. What you love about Calvary. Just a little aside, would you please remind me of your name? I'm Todd. Thank you so much. I don't mind doing that. I can get away with it. How long have you been coming to Calvary? Probably is a better thing to say, oh, are you new? I've been here for 42 years, young man. How long have you been coming to Calvary? Remind me your name, please. Oh, I'm new, first time. It's trying to put the person at ease. Roger had a comment? Do you,
stand up, that gives us a few more moments to
do you know statistically the absolute number one worst thing possible to do to make newcomers feel unwelcome or is to stand up? That's why we're trying to say, honestly, it's a great thing if people do it, but to give them the option of standing or raising your hand, either one, the most important, so please talk to them. The most important thing we're trying to get actually is the card with filled out information. Because if, I'm making an assumption here, if I go to a new church and I got to figure out where it is and what time the service is and what it's like and how to dress and where do I park and where do I get in and what are the normal customs there, and I'm going to be interested enough in it, like, well, the sermon was pretty good, the music was pretty good, the people were nice, the coffee wasn't the worst I've ever had, etc., and I'm going to fill out a card that says, I liked it so much with all those new things, I'm willing for you to contact me. That is, I don't know, this is probably not PC, that person has given us his or her phone number. You can call me. I'm interested in a follow-up. If they're going to go that far to stand or raise your hand or give out a card, I think it's our responsibility to meet where they are, where they're comfortable. Here's who we are as Calvary Church. If you want to know more, come on.
we have a chance to make an immediate connection with them right after the service.
We do. At 11 o'clock we do. At 7:30, the pre-coffee hour tailgating we do. Interestingly enough, at 9 o'clock we kind of do. I haven't encouraged it, but a whole bunch of people have been showing up right now in the parish hall and just standing around talking, drinking coffee. I've never called it coffee hour, but it's kind of what's happening. Perfectly fine by me. I hope people do more of it. So, there aren't 350 people in this room right now because they don't all come to Adult Forum. Eventually we'll have 2 of these, but I also hope we have something going on after the service for those who want to talk, and that's fine too. Why we're doing all this in terms of attracting, welcoming, integrating, we haven't gotten to the integration part, is because I think it's the right thing to do. If we had a gazillion members, I still think we'd do it. It's about welcoming people into community to meet God with these people in this place. But if you're a facts and figures type person and think of what are our futures, if you were doing the actuarial tables of the Episcopal Church, it is dire. If you see the diocese, do you all have this in a handout? So you can study this. The bottom dropped out in 2009, and it stayed there. I think I said last week, the bishop said, well, those numbers might be slightly inflated, as in we added 6, 7 new congregations, but actually not any people. We're okay as a diocese. We stabilized, we're in okay shape. But here is Calvary Church. Now, the question that ought to be asked is, where are you getting these figures from? These are the self-reported facts and figures on what's called the annual parochial report. So it may be exaggerated, but at least it's consistently exaggerated. So it's self-reported. It's good to have some type of baseline. And so the green bar up there you'll see is plate and pledge income. So that's what people give. The blue bar is baptized members, and that listed probably 1575, give or take. It's now at a little over 1,600. The baptized membership is the most easily made up. The plate and pledges we pretty much know to the penny. The red bar there, it's really fun to adjust the numbers so it makes things look bigger or smaller depending on how you do it. But the red bars are the worship attendance. And so that means, we discussed this last time, I believe, Sunday morning services, everybody who's there. And if we have a Sunday night, if we have evensong, that counts. If they're not a concert, if there is a clergy person vested saying prayers in a group, in a gathering on Saturday night or Sunday, that's what they're talking about. So it is consistent over time. Some places I've been count wedding attendance, which is, if you do 10 big weddings of 300 people, think of how much, if you average that in, you just skewed your attendance. I think this is probably fairly accurate. But Leslie, would you say from being here that's fairly accurate? So the Sunday attendance, is probably 375. It's closer to about 325, has been for the last couple of years. Is that about right? 325 and 350. What I've looked at in the book, which this is all from a big magic old-fashioned ledger book. It's red, but it's got a page after page of every service we do. Who's the preacher, who's the celebrant, how many people were there, what day it was, the date, and the name of the service. So Eucharist on the third Sunday of Lent, and so on and so forth. Notice where we were in 2003. It's a little bit higher. Now here's the handout that to me has so much information on there. I could spend about 10 classes on this. It's also made for somebody who's about 8 years old to read it because of the font size. But this, I think, will be helpful for you to study, especially if you like this type of stuff. And so, Ken Smith, who's amazing, made the adult version that we can read a little bit better than that. And so, just to go through very briefly for you to study on your own, total pledges from ASA is average Sunday attendance. So, top line, in the year 2000, we had 431 pledges. In the year 2013, we had 341 pledges. What do we have for 2015, Mary Lou?
I know the dollar value.
That's right, about 350? Right about 350 now, so we went up 9. And so you see, what happened? I don't know. I always know that when there is a family fight, for example, we're trying to preserve Episcopal identity at Calvary for the whole diocese. Some people just don't want to be around that. Some people came, some people die, move away. For whatever reason, this is just trying to compare apples to apples. So we have 341 in 2013, 431. But you'll notice what happened, the money, total dollars, where it was only at 721. 2013 it was 984, and what is it? 1,015,000, so our second highest total ever. So you see average plate and pledge, that's total amount divided by the number of pledges. Net pledge income, how much actually came in. Variances in there. Endowment fund payout, which is 3/4 of the way down. That's an important one to see of how much we were taking percentage-wise. And now that it's back to 5.25%, and just to see how much was coming out of there. What's our endowment? Anybody remember? Total amount? About $5 million. How much do we really need to take care of this building so the rest of us, our pledges go to mission and ministry? Probably double at least what we've got to just care for all the building stuff. There's all our expenses, variances, etc., etc. Gordon's going to help us out with that. For the record, Gordon Fisher has pledged $5 million. All this stuff about attracting, welcoming, integrating, these are indirectly related. The reason we want new members is, thank God we can have some more volunteers on Altar Guild, or we need some more singers, that will happen. That's not why we do it. Oh, thank God we'll get more dollars and pledges. That is happening. That's not why we do it. But it's a natural outgrowth. We had 20 new pledges this year, 18 to 20.
Probably 25.
So people new to Calvary in the last year. I've said this a million times. It almost always takes 12 to 18 months from when I show up and start coming to services, and then I come every other week, and then maybe 3 times a month, and I give $5 on the plate, and my spouse might do something. It takes 12 to 18 months from when that you first start coming to you first start pledging, as in sign a card, I'm going to be here for a whole year and give you money for a whole year. So that we have 20 plus is remarkable. I think that's Leslie's work, that's the work from all of you, as well as TJ following up. I would expect that to continue. And look, I would guess 4 years we'll be back 100 pledges from where we are. Financially, we'll be fine in 4 years, assuming our budget doesn't go up at all, of course. What questions do you have about newcomer stuff, your role in all this, facts and figures from Calvary or the diocese or all these financial figures? I like sharing and being as transparent as possible. Here's where we are, here's what we got, so everybody knows. Yes, Doc. The question is, are new people coming mostly younger, middle-aged, or older? I have seen a lot of younger people, 20s, 30s, but they're really all different ages. I've met several people who say, I used to go to Calvary and left and have come back. That's actually that normally doesn't happen. When you leave, you get involved somewhere else and stay there. Some people are coming back. There's no one, like just new married couples, just young adults. It's all sorts of conditions. Male, female, gay, straight, young, old, all across the board. Yes?
I'm curious, the people that are coming, are they local? Or are they people like from outside of the Shady Side?
So the question is, are the new people coming, are they in the immediate neighborhood, Shady Side, Squirrel Hill, East Liberty, or are they farther afield? It's very much like the congregation as a whole. I see a lot of Squirrel Hill people, some Shady Side people. Oh, I don't know, Gibsonia is represented here.
About 80%, I'd say.
Murraysville.
This is the closest Episcopal church.
What, other than just it's the closest Episcopal, what brought you? How long have you been coming?
We wanted an Episcopal church, so.
Also, one of the rectors at the church we attended in Tennessee recommended Calvary.
We actually we have an excellent reputation around the country. Leslie said this. I've heard people who travel in business who visit. I got one today. They visited church. I think it's hey, Jonathan, I went to church. Here's the bulletin from where I was. But they'll say, where are you from? Oh, I'm from the Diocese of Pittsburgh. Oh. Oh, I go to Calvary. Oh, so nice to meet you. And that's it is what it is. But our reputation is really, and it has been that way for a long, long time. Recently, it got a bump in that. Other than its Episcopal Church Mass, I'm sorry to put you on the spot. Why did you stay?
TJ reached out to us. There happened to be a young adult lunch right after. We have a small, our daughter's a year and a half, and the nursery workers were really wonderful. The adult forum is probably the main reason that we're like, we gotta get back next week and see what else we have to say.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's the main reason every week.
Even more so than this service. No offense.
It's like, oh God, it's Jonathan again. No, that's a great point. People connect with what's important to them. Now, I look around, the nursery is not a big deal to some people. It's vital, as in if it's not pretty good or really good, we can't come here. Is it handicap accessible for some people? Is there music that I love? There are lots of connecting points. And that, of course, that changes over time, what's important. But those are a fantastic story. Would you mind saying your name so everybody knows the 8-month people at Calvary? Great. Anybody else new in the last year? I've been here a year and a couple months now, so I'm... oh, dear, I'm supposed to be at the service in 2 minutes. Oh, good. Any last questions?
There wasn't a demographic that really stood out amongst newcomers. Is there any demographic that sticks out as far as who stays?
That's a great question. There probably are a few, as I'm thinking about it. Most of the new people that have stuck, it's been some younger people, but partly that's just also more noticeable because looking around the church, it's not been a whole lot of 20s and 30s. It's been people over 35. Did I save that one? And so it's more noticeable there. But it's all ages are really sticking. Any questions before we go? So, thank you. What's the most important thing you, as a member of Calvary, can do to welcome people at our church?
Greet somebody in the pew.
Greet somebody in the pew. Talk to them at coffee hour. Just treat them as a person. Connect where they are. All right, thank you all.